Hello. We're discussing the yellow wallpaper. We didn't already do that. We talked a little bit when we went through the presentation and like the article about why she wrote it. Hmm. Oh shoot, I didn't take attendance last period. Yeah. David was here. Marilyn was here. Everyone else was virtual. But
Why do you say good morning?
Because I meant to schedule it to send tomorrow morning and then I just forgot and hit send. And I thought about sending a second email to be like, oops, sorry. But then I was like, that's just going to be too much trouble. It's not a weird enough thing to warrant a second email.
So tomorrow is just a quiz, and then Monday we have the
Easy peasy. God, I wish I had a different sort of chair. I just hate this chair. It makes my posture bad. It makes my back hurt. It squeaks a lot. It's just not good.
You order a chair and then have you.
Have you put it together? Do you just enjoy assembling things?
I do, and also I did that for Washington and with Anderson
Okay.
last year.
I'll give it some thought. I really want, I don't know what kind of chair I want. I don't know. I took a chair from the garbage this morning. It's not a chair I could use here, but when I left my apartment, I had a bag of trash to put in the dumpster. And when I went to the dumpster, someone had just left like a wooden dining table chair beside the dumpster, like to get rid of it. And I'm actually missing a chair because literally 2.5 years ago, I gave one of my dining room chairs to Daniel Nykirk and asked him to fix it for me. And it has not happened. And I don't think I'll ever get it back at this point. So I was like, I'm just going to take this garbage chair. It's the same shape. It's not the same color, but it'll do. Oh my God. You should get rid of him, her, whoever that was. She said, this student is stalking me. And I said, you should get rid of him. Just doing a little congratulatory cheer or something. Okay, Julius is here. Kayla's here. Madison, not right now. Kenzie's here. And Isaiah is here. Maybe I should wait a minute and see if Madison shows up. Guys who are not physically present, I was just telling Julius, he asked why my email that I sent to you said good morning when I just sent it. I meant to send it tomorrow morning. I meant to schedule it to send at 8 a.m. instead of sending it now, but then I didn't. So read it as if it were Friday morning. for you guys, tomorrow the quiz is due, and almost all of you have already taken the quiz and gotten 100 on it, so you have nothing to worry about. The only other thing that you need to do before I see you next on Tuesday is read or listen to me read the story that I've posted on the announcement section called Where Are You Going? Where Have You Been? It is a very weird story. It's creepy. It starts out not that creepy, and then it just really takes a turn. And you're like, oh God, what's happening? I mean, sort of like, what's that? A Good Man Is Hard to Find in that way, where it starts out and you think it's pretty normal. And then just all of a sudden you're like, oh no, things are actually really dire in this circumstance. Okay, so hopefully Madison will show up, but I'm just gonna scoot closer to you guys, and we're gonna talk about the yellow wallpaper a little bit. We did talk about it a little bit when we were looking at the PowerPoint and when we were doing the article about why she wrote it and stuff. But we have more. We can talk about. Okay. The yellow wallpaper. Okay. We talked a lot about how it's intended to sort of represent how women are being suppressed, particularly through like men in power or through the institution of marriage. Oh, here comes Madison. I knew she'd show up. I just knew it. Let me change your attendance.
You know Meatloaf?
Yeah, I know Meatloaf. I love Meatloaf.
You know?
Yeah. I don't know if we did.
Mr. Mike. My mom really likes it.
Oh, okay. Bat Out of Hell is like one of my favorite albums ever.
Really?
Yeah.
We're playing.
I know.
Oh.
I'm really excited about it.
It's so fun.
It's such a fun song. It's got to be fun to play. That long intro. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. That I recommend that whole album. It's very good. It's weird, but I like it. Okay. Let me get my head back on straight. No, not that. That's not what I want. Okay, so we were talking about how women are oppressed, and particularly like this narrator, because her husband is her doctor, so he's got a lot of power over her, and that's weird. Okay, I'm just looking through some stuff about it. What? I feel like we did talk about a lot of these questions already, to be honest. Ooh, okay. Here's an interesting question that we've talked about, but not with the specificity in this question. So the narrator describes the figure behind the wallpaper as a strange, provoking, formless sort of figure. The faint figure behind seems to shake the pattern just as if she wanted to get out. First of all, just to recap, what do we think the figure might represent?
Her.
Her, yes.
And her loss of sanity.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So here's an interesting question. It says the faint figure behind seems to shake the pattern just as if she wanted to get out. Why is behind the appropriate word?
Like behind bars.
Behind bars. And she does actually have like bars on her windows. So it's almost like I feel like there's a word for what I'm looking for, but I don't know what it is. Like the paper is a miniature version of what's going on in the bigger reality, like her being locked in the room with bars. it also asks what gender assumption did these symbols underscore? And I don't know if maybe it's trying to imply that like women have to sort of get behind men, which like in some cultures they literally do. And I can't think of what country it is, but like if a man and a woman are walking down the street, she's not allowed to be in front of him. But like, I mean, that's a very specific example, but just how women at the time were expected to be like subservient to men. So there, we talked a little bit about this too, but I wanted to reiterate and maybe delve into it a little bit more. When he's asking her how she is, or like saying that you're really a lot better, and she says, better in body perhaps, I began and stopped short. For John sat up straight and looked at me with such a stern, reproachful look that I could not say another word. What seems to be John's attitude about her condition? What seems to be her husband's attitude about her condition? She just needs to chill. Just don't worry about it. Just take a load off. Just calm down. And you know, they say that's the one thing you're like never supposed to say to a woman is calm down. What an excellent example. If you tell a woman to calm down, she'll tear off all the wallpaper and possibly kill herself. Did I tell? No, it wasn't you guys. Never mind. How do you think that like him telling her to chill out or whatever, how does that mirror society's attitude, and not even just then, but it could be now as well, about mental health conditions?
That like the doctor always knows what's going on, and they don't always, or just not just the doctor, but like people in general, just when we say something, when we describe what we're feeling, it's just kind of like pushed underneath a rug.
Yeah.
Ignored.
Yeah, 100%.
Medical problem.
Yeah, people are making a bigger deal of it. And do I even want to say that? And I feel like even now, yeah, sometimes we just want to like sweep things under the rug. He specifically, John in the story, is like, don't talk about it. Like, I don't even want to hear you say anything like that. It's so like stigmatized. We've gotten a lot better about it, but I feel like still it's not a thing that's talked about as openly as it should, which is one reason that people who are having any kind of mental health issues find it difficult to actually ask for help, because it's still stigmatized to a certain extent. Like I said, not as bad as it has been before, but I think there is still kind of a lot of attitude of like, it's not as bad as you think it is. Just try to get on with life. I feel like the way he treats her is sort of like telling a depressed person to cheer up. It's like, yeah, that's great advice. Stop being so sad. Like an anxious person to just not worry. It's like, I'd love to, but that's just not the way that mental health works. Here's an interesting question. She says towards the end of the book, she's talking about like how the woman in the wallpaper creeps around, and she has to creep during the day. Or no, she has to creep at night because people don't creep around during the day. That's too weird. Or is it the other way?
No, it's after she wants to creep around, or she doesn't want to go outside because of people that creep around outside.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Like
She
doesn't like how people outside.
She doesn't like how people outside are creeping. She says that the woman in the wallpaper does creep by daylight, but that must be embarrassing. It must be humiliating. Let's pick that apart and see if you guys can think of anything that can mean. Like, why do you think she has to creep by daylight, and why would that be humiliating? Is there is there any symbolism to her creeping around in the daylight?
Well, I guess because it's like she moves around more freely during the night, it could explain how the narrator can think and be more free during the nighttime when nobody's watching her, paying attention to her.
Yeah.
During the day, she kind of has to like do everything in secret.
Yes, I like that. And particularly if the woman in the wallpaper is like a reflection of her, then, and like her situation, then I guess she would consider it kind of embarrassing to creep around or like to show how crazy you are just out in the open in the daylight, because she has been told she has to suppress that. Ooh, that's a good idea. Okay, I'm switching to another thing here. Okay, so we've talked about how there's this issue of control between John and the narrator, and particularly with him being both her doctor and her husband, which is kind of two positions of authority. We could argue that her like husband shouldn't be a position of authority, but it is in this story. How do you see the control shift by the end of the story? At the beginning, he's got all the control because he's her husband, and marriage is this institution where like man is breadwinner and wife is homemaker and mother, and he's also her doctor, so he's got a lot of power and control over her. How does that control shift by the end of the story, or does it?
Well, I mean, like, he kind of takes control by locking the door. So,
He kind
lock
of,
the door and then like put the key on the key.
yeah, under a plantain leaf.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what she said.
Really,
So yeah, you're right about that. She does. She has some control that she locks herself in, tosses the key away. What was the other thing I was just thinking of? We kind of see we kind of see her get nice gradually some more control, even if John doesn't necessarily know it at first, because she is doing things that he's explicitly told her not to do. So she's maybe not got control over him, but she has more control over herself as the story progresses. I'm trying to think about how to ask what I want to ask. Do you think, maybe some of you might have talked about this in your prompt, but do you think that she is victorious in the end? Like, does she win over him in any kind of way? She might be dead at the end. It's very possible. But does she?
I don't think there's a winner or loser in this situation. I just think she gained enough control where she could somewhat have her own independence and like make a decision, even though it's kind of a crazy one. She can make it for herself instead of having someone else do it.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. She's even kind of like exhibiting some control by like some control over her life by ending it, which sounds really strange, but at least it's her, like you said, at least it's her decision. It's not left up to him. Um, Here's an interesting question. Do you guys think that it's important in any way, or that it makes sense in any way that the paper is yellow? Like, do you think it could have been any other color? Like, would it be the same story if it was the green wallpaper?
Mm.
Depends on the yellow.
it's a bright yellow like that,
Uh-huh.
or if it's like not a bright yellow. Like
Yeah, like a pale yellow. Oh, okay. Like a mustardy, like, yeah.
Kind of like a moldy,
Yeah, I kind of feel like the descriptions that she gives, it does seem more like moldy yellow, and like she says there's like that smell of sulfur, and like the descriptions just are not pleasant.
um, I don't know.
We've been doing a lot of stuff with color symbolism in my English 3 class. We're reading, I don't think anybody in this class would have read this with me, but Ethan Frome, which is a really depressing book that I like a lot. And so we did this thing about how like different colors have different associations with them. Like red tends to be either like passionate love, bravery, like strong emotions, or it's like blood and death, one of the two. And so like if somebody's using it intentionally, then it's probably for one of those reasons. Oh, we talked about yellow. We did kind of have that like two-sided thing, like it depends on what kind of yellow, because I think yellow can be very like upbeat and happy and sunshiny, or it can be sort of like old and like almost anxiety inducing. Hey Reggie. I don't know he's done. Oh, I want to tell you a thing I learned about him. Reggie, our custodian, he's only got 4 toes on one foot and only 2 toes on the other foot.
Wait, what? How?
He is a hardcore diabetic and he lost his toes to diabetes. Isn't that wild?
Oh my God.
I know. It's very upsetting. He's got like an interesting walk. Like, I don't know if I'd call it a limp exactly, but I'm like, oh, I bet that's why.
Probably.
Yeah, he just like told me about it yesterday. Because I was like, are you getting a vaccine on Friday? He was like, yeah, I have to. I'm diabetic. I have like lost toes to diabetes. I know. Wild. Do you think this story could have taken place in a different place or time? Like, would it make sense? Or like, could there be some version of it now?
There could be some version of it now, but it would have to be like somewhat different because we do have technology and all that jazz, and
Yeah,
that it's kind of much harder to find a cottage in the middle of nowhere.
that's true.
Also to rent for only 3 months. Like,
I know they'd have to like do an extended Airbnb kind of deal.
yeah.
But I saw a question about like why colonial mansion might be an important thing, and I've never read anything about that in regards to this story, but and I feel like this might be one of those situations where it's like, okay, you're reading too much into it and the author didn't mean that, but I was like, oh, could it be like colonialism, how like that's basically colonialism is like taking over groups of people and controlling them, and he's taking a like John is overtaking her and trying to control her. Could that be a thing? It might be a little bit of a stretch though. Just a
It
thing
could
I
be.
thought about. I would be interested in seeing like a more modern version of it. Like you said, we have technology now. We don't have the rest here, but I feel like there could be some version of this where like, I don't know, like he doesn't keep her on bed rest, but like doesn't want her to have any kind of life just out of a need to control. I don't know. It could be really interesting. There are some like short film versions of this story on YouTube. I feel like last year we watched several of them and they were all not very good. I'd like to see a good version. Um, do you guys care about these characters? Like, do you like them or not like them? Do they seem realistic?
They seem realistic. They just seem outdated.
That's fair. The way they talk is pretty like old fashioned.
Yeah.
He calls her like
John's kind of a meanie. I
he,
was gonna say something, but I can't say that word in school.
he is. He's exactly what you're thinking. Do you think that well, we talked yesterday, or not yesterday, I don't know what day it was, about whether we thought he was like intentionally driving her insane, and we said that we don't think that. But do you think that he has her best interest at heart?
Uh, I think he thinks he has her best interests at heart, but not really. Because if he really did, then he would listen to her.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. I think that they're sort of plugged into those roles of like husband and wife, or like authority figure and whatever else. Um, and so he thinks that he's doing what's best for her, but this doesn't look like our idea of marriage at all, just like in a modern world, because in most marriages now there is a little bit more equality, and he wouldn't have that much control over her, and he would listen to her. He just like kind of shuts her down when she tries to talk. Okay, any questions that you guys had about this, or any thoughts that you're like, this was weird and I wanted to talk about it, or anything?
This book was wild.
It was wild. It's a crazy story, but this is one that gets like anthologized a lot. It gets taught a lot. Someone told me that they had done this story in Mr. Johnson's class a couple of years ago. And obviously, like from what we read the day before yesterday, it's a really important story. It's hard to actually like pinpoint stories that have really like made a difference in the world in any kind of way, but this one did, and I think that's really cool. They didn't do the rescuer, or like the guy who prescribed it to her originally stopped doing it. He's also mentioned, and I can't remember if she changed his name or not, but he's mentioned in the story. Weir Mitchell, if I'm remembering right. Look it up. Yes. Okay. She straight up called him out in the story. There was a point where John was like, if you're not better by the end of our time here, then I'll take you to see Weir Mitchell. And that was the person who that was the real doctor who had prescribed her the rest cure, and he had like pioneered the idea of the rest cure, and she called him out on it. That's pretty cool.
Dang.
Kind of like if I was writing a story about like a fictional version of Allegro, and I was like, oh, that one guy, Daniel Nykirk, change everybody else's name to protect their identities, but just like destroyed his reputation. Oh, I'm so interested in this guy now, in Weir Mitchell. There's like his Wikipedia page is insane. Okay, I just have to read you this, and it's not relevant to the story, but also isn't it? There's a section on his Wikipedia that just says ghost story. It says, sometime during the late 1800s, a ghost story was published about Dr. Mitchell that he was never able to lay rest. The story tells how a very young girl in rags and threadbare shawl came to his door in bad weather and begged him to take care of her sick mother. The girl guided Mitchell to the sick woman, who turned out to be a former house servant of his who was suffering from pneumonia. Mitchell helped the woman, then congratulated her on having such a fine daughter, but the woman told him her daughter had died a month earlier. In a cupboard, Mitchell found the shawl the girl had been wearing, and it had not been worn out that night.
Oh, heck no.
I know, right?
No. Those kind of things like scare me.
I know, it's really creepy. Apparently, he wrote a book. I don't know if this is a novel or not. He wrote in this book, he wrote about a man who told a story about a little dead child who rang up a doctor one night and took him to see her dying mother. And then the man was constantly bothered by believers and disbelievers and unable to stop the story. So he kind of wrote a story about like how he had been part of a ghost story and nobody believed him about it. That's wild. Stuff like that freaks me out too. And like, I don't really know what I believe about ghosts or anything, but I will say my mom works at nursing homes and like she has forever. And she's told me some weird stories about people who have recently died. Makes me uncomfortable. Okay, any other thoughts, feelings, reflections?
No,
No.
no.
All right. Well, we still got like 20 minutes left in class, but you guys can take this time. I think that almost all of you have done your quiz at this point. If you haven't, you can get it done now. You can start reading the story, and then you just wouldn't have anything to do for e-learning days. So I will see you guys on Tuesday.
See you Tuesday.